Hello everyone, and welcome. I'm Elliott from Dirk.com, and today we're going to be making this pretty much exactly as you see it. I did tweak the file a little after recording, and that's the file everyone on Patreon has right now, but basically all I did was add my logo and some simple camera movement, and everything else we're going to cover, I promise. Now I'm doing this tutorial because the other day I was trying to make some fun architectural renders, and I made this. As you can see, the whole architecture thing didn't work out so well, but hey, I ended up with what I thought was a pretty cool animation. Some of you were asking for a tutorial on how to do it, and since it's pretty simple and pretty fun, I figured, well, let's go ahead and do it. So here we are today. Now you may be thinking, how on earth am I going to model that beautiful car and grass? But let me assure you, we won't. We're going to save ourselves about a zillion hours by downloading these assets for free from Chocofur.com. Chocofur has an absolutely massive library of models, mostly for architectural type renders. They're all super high quality, native to Blender, and all around awesome. The Tesla I used in my original post is one that I paid for, but the one we'll use today is completely free. And along with that car model, we'll also be using the super nice grass pack that's also free. The grass was actually not free until recently. I had the idea to do this tutorial, and I asked the guys at Chocofur if they'd be willing to make a mini pack for me with some grass models so that you all, my dear viewers, could follow along. And Lek, the guy in charge over at Chocofur, said he'd just make the whole pack for free. Yeah, what a nice dude. So links to the car and grass models will be in the description. You can go ahead and start downloading those. Now, if you are interested in browsing this site, they obviously have quite a bit of free stuff, but there's also a ton that you can buy. If you do find something you're interested in purchasing, you can get 25% off with my code DIRK25. That's DERRK25. Now, full disclaimer, this is not a paid advertisement or anything. I've been using Chocofur models for a while now, and I paid my own hard-earned cash to get the models I've used, but I just like them a lot and wanted to tell you about it. So if you do happen to buy something using my code, I will get a percentage of your purchase. So of course, have at it. You'll get some nice models, and you'll be supporting me as well. So back to the tutorial itself. The bulk of what we're going to create is going to be covered in like the first 30 minutes or so, but since I know you guys like all the extra little tidbits, I do have all that extended kind of into the back half of the tutorial. That's where we're going to make the headlights glow, make the grass wave around, touch up the lighting a little, just kind of, slow down, talk about the details. So if you're short on time, really just want to understand the basics, and you might not have to watch the whole thing, but of course I do always try to pack every minute with as many good tips and tricks as possible. So if you do watch the whole thing, I hope you won't be disappointed. All that being said, while I do try to keep my tutorials as easy to follow as possible, they are not really intended for beginners. You should have some experience in Blender already if you want to follow along without too much trouble. You probably could do it as a total beginner, but there's a good chance you'd get pretty frustrated and have to Google all stuff. So not to scare you, but just want to be clear that this isn't really a beginner tutorial. If it was, it'd probably be like several hours longer. So I try to find a nice happy medium between explaining things clearly, but also keeping a nice pace. And you all seem to think I do a decent job at that. So yeah, anyways, back to that pace. Let's get started. Alrighty, so once you've got those models downloaded, it's going to be time to go ahead and bring them into Blender. The way we're going to do that is up here in the File menu. You might think you want to do Import, but that would actually be if you want to use one of these file types. But we're actually going to do Append, and the best way to move things from one Blender file to another is usually going to be using that Append option. And these Chocofur models are actually native to Blender, and a big advantage of that is that we can use that Append feature, which in the case of this free car 02 is, instead of just clicking here and then having an import, we have all these options, so we can import individual things from the blend file. You basically have full access to everything in there. But what we're going to do is double click on object here, and I'm just going to press A to select everything, just like you would in edit mode or something like that, and click append. Now, even though you saw those options for like materials and whatnot, you don't need to import those individually. They'll all come, like if you import an object, it's going to also come with the materials that were on it. So as you can see, we've got different materials and stuff on there already. So yeah, looking real good. There is a huge cube in the way though, so let's press X to delete that. Now let's just take a quick look at this model in the look dev mode here, this little button up on the top. And yeah, it looks pretty freaking good if you ask me. These Chocofur models are super high quality. This one, the materials are set up for cycles, but Lek, the guy who runs Chocofur, actually told me that He's going to be updating the entire library to work with Eevee as well. So that's something to look forward to. But really, this looks pretty fantastic. And if we drag out a new window here, we can take a look at this material in just a little bit more detail. You might want to, edit it a little bit. So let's select that object. And I think over here in the material tab, it's this top one, exterior 01. And that's going to be the car color itself. So, change that to whatever color you like. I think I might end up using kind of like a green color, since it's going to be grassy. Make it a little bit darker, turn the value down, make it less valuable. Is that the proper terminology there? Anyways, the shader is actually quite advanced. Anytime you see a green shader like this, a lot of times if you download a model, you might see that. If you press tab, you can go into like a shader edit mode, and this is actually everything that's happening behind the scenes in that shader. But yeah, you don't need to worry about that. So it's basically all been boiled down into just a few kind of convenient options here. This flake scale, this is a really cool detail. One thing I wanted to show you is there's just kind of this nice kind of flake effect. Give your car model a little bit of sparkle. I think that looks real nice. And then of course there's the coat strength. We also changed the color, and then you could make it more matte or metallic looking. So yeah, lots of options there. Pick whatever you like and leave it at that. So that's cool. Next thing we need to do is bring in our grass models so that we can start covering this car with that grass. And the way I'm going to do that is first create a new collection. And you don't necessarily have to do it in this order, but this is how I like to do it. I like to create a new collection. I'm going to call it the grass collection. And then with that collection selected, I'm going to now append the grass models the same way I did the car model. So I'm going to go File, Append, and then I need to navigate to where that is. And these grass models actually were not free until just recently. So I think they're here in the environment, grass 02, 02 blend, object, and I'm going to select them all and append them. So yeah, like I was saying, these were actually, they were not free. I had purchased them from Chocofur and used them to create that animation you saw on Instagram. Thank you for all the love on that, by the way. And a lot of people were asking me kind of how to make something like that. And, I wanted to do a tutorial, of course, which I'm doing now. But I was like, am I going to have to model the grass myself and then, show people how to do that? But it's not going to look good. So I actually reached out to Chocofur and asked them. And I don't know how to say that. I keep saying it like different ways. Chocofur. Just look at the spelling and watch some of Lex videos. He pronounces it. So I asked him, I was like, hey, would you mind making maybe just a couple of these grass models free? And I think when I did my animation, I actually only used 3 of them. It really only takes a few to get the effect. It would look pretty good with just one, honestly. But he was like, yeah, sure. And he made the whole set free. So thanks to him for that. If you want to show them some support, obviously go buy some models, use my discount code. I think it'll kick a couple bucks back to me. So, and while I'm self-promoting, might as well like and subscribe, right? Anyways, we got the grass models in there. What we need to do is now get them onto the car. So you're just going to want to select one of them and then just move it over there and then repeat that process about 15,000 times. Just kidding. You don't want to do that. That would be a huge pain in the butt. We're going to do it with a particle system. So to add a particle system, it's going to work on, any one object we select. So I'm going to have it be on this object. But there's a lot of parts and pieces to this object. You can see we've got the text down here, these kind of event details. That's all great for the render, but we don't want our particle system to necessarily go in all those places. So I want to create an individual object that's just going to be for our particle system. And the way I'm going to do that is in this object, I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to press Alt-A just to make sure everything's been deselected. And to select the objects I want, I'm just going to press L. And that's going to select mesh islands. So these are just parts of the mesh that are separate from everything else, and they're not touching any other vertices. And, just like a real car would be, these Chocofur models are the same. These are all separate panels and whatnot. So I'm just going around pressing L, making sure I've got everything that I want to have grass on it selected. And once I do, I can just press P, and I'll separate by selection. And then what that will do is create a new object from that selection that I can then, let's tab out of edit mode here. Now if I select that, we'll see that I just have that kind of exterior part. And just for the sake of organization, I'm going to remove these other materials. If I need to go in and change the color again, it's just that one. It'll be a little easier to see what's going on. So with that selected, I'm going to add a particle system to it. And the way I'm going to do it is over here in the particle properties tab. I'm going to hit this little plus sign, and that will create a particle system. If you press spacebar, you'll see particles start to drop out of it. If you've never seen a particle system before, you're probably losing your mind. This is super cool. If you're distracted and you need to leave the tutorial and explore particle systems for hours on end, then feel free. Come on back. We'll be here for you. But anyways, we don't want to do that type of a particle system. We want to use a hair particle system. So I'm just going to click this button here. And yeah, now we've got there's the grass. It's all green, ready to go. It's beautiful. No, I'm just kidding. It's rendering as paths or strands. I always forget what they're called. We don't want them to render like that. We want to have it be those grass models. So the way I'm going to get that to work is over here in the settings. I'm going to go down to render. Okay, so yeah, it's rendering as a path right now is what that's called, but I want it to render as a collection, and this is why we put the grass into its own collection. So what I'll do is just select that collection, and yeah, now we can see that the grass is being applied to the car. We can bump this scale up a little bit, which by the way, just to get the, in case all you needed from this tutorial was how to grow the grass, we're basically going to keyframe this this scale there, and that's a little teaser tip for what's going to happen in a little bit. So yeah, it's working out decently, but as you can see, the grass is kind of laying at the wrong angle there. So what I need to do is, and I don't know exactly why this happens. It always seems to come in at the wrong angle, and it's always a little finicky. It can be frustrating, but we just need to rotate this these grass models over there, and then that will it'll rotate them here as well. And that is if you have this object rotation checkbox enabled. So now I can select all these. I'm just pressing C to circle select, and I can just rotate them. I think I need to do maybe the y-axis the other way. So holding control, I can rotate that exactly 90 degrees on the y-axis, and it usually is. It's exactly 90 the wrong way or 180 the wrong way. So just hold control when you're moving things, and it'll snap it to even increments. So now that's coming out the right way. Looking pretty good, a little bit sparse though. So what we want to do probably is increase the amount of particles here. And now this can start to slow down your computer. You can probably hear mine whizzing in the background. I need to get a new computer sometime soon. Thanks to all the patrons giving me some bucks a month. I actually started donating most of that money from Patreon to the Blender Foundation because I felt like I should. But yeah, maybe I'll use some of that money to get a faster computer one of these days. People are always asking me what kind of computer I have, and it's really not. I actually looked at, so I built this computer like a few years ago, and I looked at the specs, and to build the computer I have right now only costs like $600, which, you know, of course that's not no money, but as far as like high-end PC 3D computers go, that's not that much. But anyways, back to the point. We got to add more particles here to kind of round this out, and you obviously, you know, the more the merrier. If you want to maintain the kind of shape and form of the car, which I think is a nice thing to do, then I think it looks best if you leave this scale pretty low and then increase the number of particles. But of course, then yeah, you have way more geometry in your scene. And while we're doing that, let's talk about a couple things. So even though we've got all these 12 different grass models, they're spread out randomly kind of here. There still is a little bit of a pattern here, and that's because these are emitting, I think, somewhat based on like where the faces of the object are. I don't know. I don't fully understand it, but over here in the source settings, we can change this from, we want to leave it on faces, I think, but we can change it from jitter distribution to random, and that just kind of, yeah, it just makes it a little more random the way they are distributed, as the setting names would suggest, I guess. So that's one thing you want to do to make it look a little bit more random. I think that looks better. And then if we bump this, let's keep the number down. I just want to show you something here. So let's bump the scale up, and this may actually be easier to see in our normal view here, which, by the way, I mean, gosh, Eevee is so crazy. This is like rendering realistically, and we can like be in edit mode and stuff at the same time. Wild and crazy viewport here in Blender 2.8. So I'm going to bump the scale up a little bit. Let's go into our regular view. Now, even though we did that random distribution, we're still gonna be seeing some. I gotta look for a good place to show you here. We're still gonna be seeing some, like, a little bit of repetition here. Like, I think I can see it right here and right here. Maybe on the edge it would be easy to see. Yeah, so there's a few points here where we can change a seed here to get maybe a better example. So yeah, like here, for example, even though we've got, like I said, these 12 different grass models here, they're being applied all at the same rotation. So you can kind of see here, we've got this like repeating effect where you see that same grass blade. Just because when you got so many of these particles, I mean, 5,000 I have right now, even having 12 different grass models, you do start to see some repetition. So that's because, like I said, they're rotated kind of the same way. So what we can do to change that is there's this little checkbox right here called advanced, which I think it's silly that there's an advanced option in the particle settings because, like, I don't know, as far as 3D goes, I feel like particle systems is a pretty advanced thing already. So the fact that there's like an advanced checkbox is probably pretty daunting, but stay with me. It's not too bad. So check this advanced option and we'll now open up this option to do rotation here, which this rotation is different than this rotation. And then there's rotation out here. If your particles are rotated the wrong way, just, hunker down, spin things around. You'll get it right eventually. It can be a little bit frustrating, but with that rotation checkbox, we can adjust this phase value, which will start to kind of spin them around, but I think it spins them at the same amount. So what's really more important here is this randomized phase option. So just give that a little bit of value, and that's going to spin things around. And now we have a much more random distribution of those grass particles, I'd say. Last thing you could do to maybe make it look a little bit more random is also adjust the scale randomness. You don't want to do too much here. Like if you make it too high, you're going to just have some particles that are like super small and then some that are too big. And I think the biggest ones would be this top value here, like whatever your scale is set to. But the smallest ones could be much smaller than that. So I don't want this to be too random, but a little bit of randomness is probably good just to kind of make it look a little more natural. So what I'll do now is just get this scale to something I like. Like I said, I want to have the form of the car still be pretty visible, but I don't want to have to use too many particles. So let's just leave the scale maybe something like that. And then let's bump the number of particles up to something like 15,000. So that looks much better. We've got a nice spread of the particles there, but it is going to be, we're only going to be seeing this from one side. We're just going to probably have our camera still. And let's actually go ahead and set that up. So what I was going to say is it would be nice if we could have the particles only appear where we're actually going to see them. Well, that's something we can do, and let's do that right now. So I'm going to first set up my camera so I know where I need the particles to actually be. So this is the camera that came with my scene. If you don't have that, you can press Shift A and add a new camera, but I've got mine in there. So I'm going to press 0 to go into my camera view, and then Shift tilde. Tilde is a little button above caps lock and tab. And you can just use your W, A, S, and D keys to kind of enter like a fly mode. And that'll just sort of allow you to move this camera into whatever position you like, just kind of something nice. I'm just going to go for a little bit of a sort of a 3/4 view there. I think that'll look pretty good. Okay, so I think that's where I'll set my camera up. And then maybe while we're at it, well, let's go ahead and do that particle thing. So we want to see particles, obviously, on this side of the car. But back here, for example, like we're not going to be seeing this at all. We're not going to be seeing through the car. I mean, you want some maybe on the edges where the glass would be because you'd see through that. But it would be nice to not have particles right here so that, we get a little more bang for our buck out of that 15,000 particles. So what I can do is set up a vertex group and have that control where those particles appear. So what I will do is select this object and then tab into edit mode. And by the way, this is something that was a little confusing to me when I first was working with particle systems. If you just select this object here, it's selecting the underlying mesh as well as the particle system. It can be a little confusing. Like these aren't separate objects. It's all still works as one. So it's easy. It's just like, just click anywhere on the grass, you'll get it. So tab into edit mode. And then what I want to do is I'm just going to go back into my camera view, and then in face select mode by pressing 3 on the top of my keyboard. And by the way, if you can't remember those hotkeys, 1 is vertex, 2 is edge, and 3 is face select mode. And those are right up here. Little vertex, edge, and face. So with that face mode selected, I'm just going to press C to circle select, which is my favorite selection method. Do whatever you like though. I'm just going to click and drag across there, and that will select. It looks like I've selected everything, But of course, like I was saying, we've avoided selecting some of the stuff on the back side. Now some of this goes through, and I think that's just because there's some kind of little tiny holes in the mesh, so it would have selected, like where that door is, it would have selected some through there. So if you want, you can deselect them, but we're just really trying to lighten the load a little bit on that particle system. We don't need to have this be completely perfect, so I think that looks fine. Like I said, we probably do want some on these edges here where we're going to see through the glass. We want it to appear like the whole car is covered, but we do want to save ourselves with not having particles where it's definitely not visible. So with all those selected, I'm going to drop down here into the object data properties, which I just read off that. It's the triangle tab. That's what I think of it as. And I'm going to add a new vertex group. So just using this plus sign here, I can add a new vertex group. And let's just name that where grass is. You can name it whatever you want, but that's what I'll name it. And then with all those still selected, I'll click assign here. Now if I press Alt-A to deselect, I'm just going to make sure that was all properly assigned. I'm going to select here, and yes, okay, so now this vertex group is that selection just as I had intended it. So now that I properly have that vertex group set up, well, what I'm going to do is go back into my particle system settings here, and I'm going to change down here in the vertex groups drop down. I can use the density option here and then select that. So now it looks like our particle system got much more dense right here where we're looking at it, but that's because we're basically taking the particles that were over here out of that total number of 15,000 and putting them on the places where we had in our vertex group. So that's one way to kind of save yourself. You don't want to have too many particles like off the screen because Blender might spend a lot of time calculating those and you're really not even going to see them. So it's good to be smart about kind of how you're using your geometry in the scene. So that looks pretty good. What do we want to do next? I think let's just do a little bit of animation. So I didn't mention it at the start, but these Chocofur models, let's actually hide the grass for now. So I'm going to go over into my modifier tab, and there's this little option, display, where you can turn off the display. If you were to render this at this time, it would still appear unless you uncheck that as well. But that's just going to speed my viewport up because while I'm working on this animation, I don't want to see all the particles just because it'll slow my viewport down. So I didn't mention at the start, but the way this Chocofur model comes in, everything is parented to this empty object here. You can see if we do this drop down, those are all the different parts and pieces underneath there. And if you wanted to move it around, you would just use this empty. And one cool thing that you might notice, you might have already noticed if you played with the model a little bit, is that there's a driver set up on those wheels, so they roll. This model is ready to roll. That was the joke I meant to say at the beginning. There, you got the joke now. Wasn't gonna leave it out. So yeah, the model's ready to roll. Oh my God, Derek, you're so hilarious. We are gonna take advantage of the fact that has been beautifully set up for us and do a little animation of this car kind of rolling into view. So let's say, I think I want my whole animation to be, let's say 6 seconds. 6 times 30, because I'm gonna be doing 30 frames per second. Let's check that over here, make sure we're all, yes, 30 FPS. FPS stands for frames per second. So 180 frames. It's going to be good for me. Let's have the car maybe take 2 seconds to roll in. So that's the Y location. So let's insert a keyframe here. And then this was actually driving, so somebody left a comment in one of my other videos. They were saying it was driving them crazy that I was right-click, insert single keyframe, when you can just press I. But I think it only works once you have a thing in there. Anyways, learn your hotkeys. Hotkeys are good. That's one that I've obviously neglected to work into my flow, work into my workflow. But anyways, I'm going to move. So at frame 1, maybe the car is just kind of halfway off screen there. So now, okay, I'll use a hotkey. I'm going to press I. Yes. Okay, so inserted a keyframe. Nice little tip for you. I've been using Blender for like 13 years, and there's still a bunch of hotkeys that I completely disregard. So yeah, it's okay if you don't know them all yet. Maybe you never will. You'll still be fine. I'm fine. It's good. Everything's fine. I don't know the I hotkey. Maybe I'll start using it more. Enough about the I hotkey. So that rolls in. Looks pretty sweet, but I kind of want to make it look like it's rolling to a stop. And right now it's like it was stopped, then it sped up, and then it slowed back down. And so that's some easing that's going on. So I'm going to go over here into a graph editor. Take a look at that easing. That's what's going on. We want it to looked like it was kind of already moving when the animation started though. So I'm going to press T up here in my graph editor and change this to, really any of these will work. I'll do the cubic one. And then I already know that that's backwards, but there it slows up and then comes to a stop. I want it to be the other way around. So I'm going to press Control E and change that to ease out. Right there, it was easing in. So now it's kind of like, ooh, okay, that's a little too fast. Maybe let's try the quadratic one. Just kind of rolls in, rolled up into the field, about to grow some grass. Yeah, that looks good like that. So let's have it roll in, and then they see me rolling. No, don't demonetize me. I didn't mean to start singing. Okay, so it rolls in. That looks cool. See, I get you guys. Maybe you guys get distracted too. Sorry, I'm trying to keep the tutorial moving along here, but animation's fun. Like a lot of times to get it looking good, you have to watch it like a bunch of times. Like, that is gorgeous. That beautiful. Chocofur model. Go buy some models. Use my discount code. Like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter. Okay, we're done watching the car rolling. It looks good. So we're gonna have it roll in, and then maybe once it kind of comes to a stop, it'll grow the grass. So let's turn that grass back on. What I'm going to do is over here in my modifiers, re-enable that. Oh yeah, grass looking good. Okay, so let's say, okay, so it finishes coming in at frame 60. Let's have the grass start to grow like right before that frame 50. And then have it finish. I guess we need to think about, okay, here's a cool little button. This little button right here in the modifier stack will take you over to the properties of the particle system. Handy little thing there. So I need to insert a keyframe. Like I already have the scale set up about how I like. So maybe leave it like right, yeah, something like it, kind of where it just was is fine. That looks good. Let's have it take that many frames to grow, because that's kind of the interesting part of our animation, right? So at frame 110 is where I'm going to put it. I'm going to insert a keyframe for the scale, and that's when I will say the grass has fully grown at that point. And then at frame 50, yeah, so right kind of before it comes to its full stop, maybe frame 45, second and a half, we'll have the scale be 0. And you actually probably want to just click here, type in 0, and you will notice it's 0.001. I wish it would let you, but it doesn't let you do a scale of 0. You'd probably have to, if you actually want it to be fully disappeared, you'd probably have to do some trickery with the visibility or some of these other settings. But so the grass models are actually still on there, but I promise you, you won't see them. It'll just blend in with that beautiful speckle texture. And yeah, so don't worry too much about it. People are going to be focused on this sweet car rolling into your scene. They're not going to be focused on the little speckles. So I'm playing this now. It's a little bit slow. But yeah, there's the whoosh. Grass is growing. Maybe I want that to happen just a tad faster. Now, if I select this object, since I only have one keyframe on the whole thing, because remember it's the empty keyframe for the movement, I know that this right here is the grass growing. I'm just going to drag that back. Maybe just make it happen a little bit faster. And again, my viewport is a little bit slow right now, but I think that might look a little bit better if it just kind of pops up like that. So yeah, looking pretty good. Let's set up a little bit more of a scene here so that we can kind of finish this thing out and turn it into something that you can share with your mom on Facebook or whoever you want to share it with. I'm going to press Shift-A, add a plane. Oh my God. Now it's an accident. I actually meant to do that on purpose earlier. So let's do it on purpose a cooler way. Watch this. So what happened there is the grass particles, or like the particle system is pulling from this grass collection. So if you accidentally put anything in that collection, like the plane I just put in, it will then start instancing it with the particle collection. So if I move like this wheel, for example, to the grass collection, boom, wheel car. Pretty, actually very, very cool. I hope somebody posts a cool thing like that on Instagram and tags me. I'd love to see it. All right, here I am getting distracted again because of how cool this looks. Okay, you don't want to do that. Let's move it out of the collection. Stay focused there. We're making grass car, which, by the way, not to get sidetracked again, you can do this with anything, obviously. You don't have to use a car, but I think the car looks pretty cool. And, you know, I feel like if I did some other model, people would be like, well, how do I do it with the car? So I had to do it just like the Instagram post. So what I need to do to undo the mistake and sidetrack I just created is select a different collection. I'm just going to select my scene collection there. Shift A, add a plane. And yeah, I'm going to scale that out here a little bit. Just kind of give myself a little bit of a ground there. And then, yeah, that looks good. My viewport is like doing this flashy thing. I don't know what that is, but I don't like it. Something to do with the particle system calculating, maybe? I don't know. It's bothering me. I'll have to look into that later. Ignore it for now. You probably can't unsee it. Okay, so 0 into my view here. Let's maybe have like a little bit of a, just kind of like a wall behind this, I think would look good. Let's press Shift A, add a, let's just do a cube. We could have saved our default cube. Here I am adding a new one. Let's just move this over here, scale it in, scale it out. Just kind of giving myself a little bit of a background here. You could do whatever you want. Maybe you want to use like a HDRI. Have that be your whole background. That would look good. But I'm just going to do kind of a plain black wall. Let's move this over. Move this over to, okay. So got just a little bit of a scene set up there. Now let's do a teeny tatty bit of lighting. So I'm going to go into my rendered view, which I think, yeah, we're still in cycles. And I'm actually going to, let's set my viewport up a little bit different. Classic Dirk viewport setup. I like to have my rendered view over here. And I like to match the aspect ratio a little bit closer. And N and T to hide these. Turn off my overlays. And yeah, now I got a nice clean rendered view over here. You can actually turn this gizmo off as well. Yeah, looking nice. But I want to render this in cycles because I'm feeling fancy with my $600 computer. $600. I know it's not like chump change, but there are, like, did you guys see Ducky 3D's new computer? Oh my gosh, I need to get that. That upgrade status going. So yeah, cycles looking pretty good, but no. It's not looking good at all. Let's work with that lighting a little more. I'm going to just delete this point lamp that comes with it, and then I'm going to turn the world strength down to 0 so that we have our cold black world, which for some reason still takes a minute to render. I'm going to add some lighting. I'm going to use an area lamp. My favorite type of lamp, at least in recent years. I like area lamps. The area lamps came into play in 2019 in Derek's workflow. That's me like talking like it's my Wikipedia page or something. I'm going to give this area lamp some strength. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm doing Control B here to box that off. And yeah, I've said it before. I'll say it again. You guys use more power with your lights. Make them super powerful, and use even numbers. Otherwise, if you're a perfectionist like me, you'll drive yourself crazy. I like to use an ellipse. Let's stretch it out to a car shape, something like that. And I think I'll use this as a, that actually doesn't look that bad right there, just kind of right over top of it. But I'm just going to kind of make it a little bit more of a backlight. Kind of move it down here like that. I think might look good. Now I'm getting a super bright highlight right here, and I can avoid that by, there's this option in any lamp, multiple importance. If you turn that off, I think it's in any lamp, it will, what does it do? Read the tooltip, Derek. Use multiple importance sampling for the light, reduces noise for area lights and sharp glossy materials. I suppose we're the second part of that sentence there, sharp glossy materials. So that looks good. Maybe crank the power up even more, 2000. Looking good. Starting to get a little distracted by this plain white scene though, so let's change that up a little bit. I'll go to my shader editor here. Let's add a material for this back wall. I'm just going to make it kind of a nice black material. Very rough, not very specular. If you turn this all the way down, it'll be like completely black, so you don't want to do that all the way, but I think that looks good. Let's be organized. Let's name this not floor. Let's name it back wall. And then let's create a material for the floor. Let's do a new material. We'll call it the floor, or let's call it ground, because it's the ground, not the floor. And I'm actually going to add some grass to that as well, I think. So let's just do kind of a brown material, as if it was dirt, something like that. You could do a texture here, obviously would look really nice, or maybe a procedural shader or something like that would look good. But I don't want to spend too much time showing you that. We're ideally going to basically cover this whole thing in grass, so you really won't see that brown. It's just there for where our particles poke through a little bit. So about those particles, we need to add that grass particle system to this floor object as well. So what I'll do is over here in the particle settings, I want to press this plus sign. Same way we did it before. That'll add a new particle system, same thing as before. They're the ones that drop down. My computer is slowing down, boy, oh my gosh. Okay, so yeah, it rolls in. So we need to get the, we don't want to go through all the same setting everything up, so we can just use the same settings from the other one in this drop down here, particle settings. And now it'll use the same stuff, but the scale here is a little bit off, so you might be inclined to just increase the scale, but that's gonna do it on our object as well. And by the way, as these tasks get more and more intensive, it's a very good idea to save your file. You can see I've got a couple of attempts there. GC for grass car 4. We'll have this be number 4. Yeah, I hope you guys have saved your files like 100 times by now. I've obviously done this like 100 times by now, so I'm not too tied to any one of these files, but be sure to save. You would hate to do a lot of work and then have to redo it. So scale, yes, need to change the scale, but it's keyframed. Want it to be different. Let's hit this plus sign. That'll allow us to have it'll kind of keep all the settings but make a new settings thing. So let's make this like ground grass. Let's just give it a name. Again, organization, always good. Let's remove the keyframes, clear keyframes, and then let's just bump them up. I want that grass to be a little bit higher. Oh yeah, looking good. Something like that, I think looks fine. But now we do not need 15,000 here. Same thing as before. We don't need grass all over the place like that. Let's try dropping this to maybe like 3,000. Take a look at that. For one, it's bigger. Okay, so that's showing through a little bit. Now, since, you could do a vertex group to do this, but I'm actually going to show you the way I do it here, which this would not work if you were going to be moving your camera, but I'm going to, let's see, how do I clear my render border? I think I need to view, clear render border, or I don't know. Let's just do that. So I'm going to like change the shape of this plane so that it's just barely in view. And that'll kind of be the same as if we were doing the particle system, or sorry, a vertex group. So I'm looking over here on the right side. I'm just making it so this plane is just outside the frame. The particles in frame fall right outside the plane. Like one of those rhyming things. That was really dumb. The particles on the plane fall barely out of frame. That's what I'll be teaching my kids when they need to learn how to rhyme stuff. The rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain. Do you guys like when I do dumb stuff like that? I am getting very sidetracked, looking good. Okay, so do you see what I did there? It's like you would never know that it ends right there. But now, similar to earlier, we've saved ourselves. So those 3,000 particles got much more dense there. Yeah, really, really good thing. You could even, if you're really fancy, maybe you'd move them behind here. You wouldn't see that, which we could do that. No, I'm tempted to. I won't. No, because it rolls into frame, so you wouldn't want it. You would see those. Now, if you really wanted to get crazy, you could make it where the grass gets pressed down right there, but we aren't going to do that. We'll just save our file here. Let's take a look at it in the render view. That looks really good. I think it looks really good. Now, I will do just a few more things. This tutorial is probably already a little longer than I wanted it to be, but you watched the phone tutorial. It was like an hour and 20 minutes long, and you said you liked the long tutorials. So if you're feeling good with yourself, you want to leave it at that, render it out, have a good time. I'm going to move on to just a few more things you can do to spice this up a little bit. Those two things I think I'll do is I'll work with the lighting just a tad more, and then I think what I'll also do is show you how you can make the headlights appear to be on, and then I'll also show you how to make the grass have kind of a fake waving, like a wavy effect. This could take a minute, so bear with me. I don't know how much longer it'll take, but you obviously have a little red bar at the bottom of the video so you can see exactly how much longer it's going to take. Anyways, let's tackle the headlights first. So I think that's one thing cool. This is, you start thinking about composition. We've got a nice light along the top of the car. We're probably going to want to add some more light right here. It's just a little bit too dark, but then it would be great if we had some interest. Oops, when you zoom in, when it's paused, it closes out your render. It'd be nice if we had some interest up here in the headlights. So there's a couple ways you could do that. You could add some point lamps behind the headlights here, and I think that actually works pretty good. I can't remember how I did it in my actual animation. Let's snap my cursor to selected. Let's tab at mode, Shift A, add a light. If this works, this is the way we're going to do it, which is how a lot of things go in Blender. You just, once it's working for you, you kind of call it quits. So I move that there. Let's let that play. That looks pretty good. So the other way you could do it would be to go into the mesh here. You can see there's actually like, there's kind of this reflector object. You could change that or add an emissive material to that to make it glow. That could be a little more realistic. It kind of depends on the design of the headlight. Some more modern headlights have really interesting shapes. You wouldn't do that really with point lamps. You'd probably want to make an actual emissive material. But for this, let's just try to turn this power up a little bit. And because that material, so right now the lamp is behind the lens there, but since it's set up for cycles, yeah, that's looking fine. So let's just move that back a little bit. Now, an important thing here is going to be to, first of all, parent that object. So I want to parent it to the car. Actually, for the sake of keeping everything organized, let's go underneath the plane here. Select that, make sure that's the second one selected, and I'm going to Control P. What I'm doing is parenting that object, because if I moved the car before I did that, it wouldn't have come with it. So parent to object. Now when the car rolls, the light isn't, otherwise the light would have just been right where our cursor was there, but that worked. Okay, so cool beans, I'm digging that. Let's add in the other light. So let's see if we can select this guy right here. There it is. I'm going to press Alt-D to make a linked duplicate, and then just drag it over on the x-axis, just till it's right about in line where it needs to go. Alt-A, Control-S. Now that should also be parented since they're linked. Yep. Okay, it's cool. I like that. One small detail I will do, and you may wish to do as well, would be to keyframe that. So let's make it look like the lights turn on when the grass grows. So the grass starts growing around there, frame 60, let's say. Let's insert it. Okay, so let's make the power 0 here. Insert a keyframe, and then let's have, over the course of 1 second, let's have the lights turn on. So that's going to be, yeah, what did we have it at, like 300? Looks pretty good. Insert keyframe. Yeah, I think that's going to look pretty sweet. Now I've got this, it looks really cool too, because you've got like all the grass around it. So it's going to be like that translucent material that's automatically set up on the grass. Looks really nice with that super bright. You might run into some like noise issues there, and especially if you're using denoising, that might get a little funky with all that light, but I think it looks pretty good. Let's leave it. Just wanted to show you how you could do that, add small details like headlights. So let's save. And what else can we do? Let's add one more. Let's add another area light. I'm going to do a area light, and I'm going to just move. I'm going to make this a disc. Kind of moving a little bit faster now because I can tell I've got the pros with me. Those other folks are still, they paused when I said you just move the grass manually onto the car instead of using a particle system. Those folks paused the video right there, and they've probably got about 30 grass particles on there by now. Got about 14,970 to go. So I was doing some math in my head there. Real intense doing math, Derek. Yeah, I just want to get a little more. I'll get a little more light on this side of the car. Let me make this a little bit bigger. That looks good. So yeah, composition. It's really dark over here, but we've got this light in the back, and then we got the headlights giving some interest here. Not gonna go full on artist on you, but think about what you're making. Think about how it looks. I think it looks good. I'm gonna leave it at that. So, okay, last cool thing I will show you how to do is make the grass wave. Now, last time I tried this, it gave me too much trouble, but this time it's going to work perfectly. Right, Derek? Right, Mr. Blender? It's not going to give me any trouble. I'm going to turn off the display for this one. And then for the sake of just showing this effect, I'm also going to go into the particle settings. I'm going to change this down to like, let's just make it like 300, and then we'll change it back after. So there's the grass. Here's the grass, which is that grass in our view? No, it's not. It's out of view. You could hide this, move it somewhere else if you need to, or you could just disable it. I think it would still render on as the particle system. Yeah, it would. But yeah, usually I just leave that on screen so I don't forget about it, and I just move it like out of frame so you can't see it, which if you were making some like crazy mirrored object, you might see it and you'd want to mess with that. But yeah, so to make that grass rotate or sway, we are gonna pause this. Well, let's actually just change this to a regular shader, and then we're gonna use a simple deform, add modifier. And I'll actually do it with this one since it's like a little taller, maybe easier to see the effect. We're going to apply it to all of them, but you just need to do it on one to start with. Let's do a simple deform. And then if this doesn't work, I'm going to go crazy. Change from twist to bend. Yes, I think it's working. I think it's working. So yeah, that's, look at that grass. Little boy dancing around. Oh, yep, and you can see it over here too. Look at those guys. Hey ho, hey ho, look at me. I can move, my brothers can't though. If it's not rotating the right way, you can try changing these axes. You can try rotating things around. You can try changing the million rotation options in the particle settings. You can drive yourself crazy. But yeah, just if it's not working, take a sip of water, stand up, step away. This can drive you crazy, I'm not lying. And just get it right. You can also add an empty object and have that control where the axis is. But this is working for me. Thank goodness it's working for me. So what I'll do is, let's just, at the start of the animation, let's maybe have this bent over this way, insert a keyframe, and then maybe over here, it bends the other way, insert a keyframe, and then maybe it bends like back, insert keyframes. Okay. So let's press spacebar to play. So yeah, we have our grass kind of waving there. And so they're waving different directions because of that phase option. They're kind of spun around different ways. So yeah, it's going to look kind of ridiculous right now, but like this is all part of the science, the trickery of 3D is that people aren't really paying attention to that. It's just like they can see that it's moving and they think you're an amazing artist. So just, yeah, we'll leave it at that. So now we want to add, and I do want this to be moving the whole time. So let's just move that over there. So we want to add that to all these other ones as well. So I'm just going to press this, circle select all those, select this one last, Control L, link modifiers. Okay, so now they're all, okay, no, they're not all going to rotate. So we need to also link the animation data. So now, so there's animation data right here on this. So since these also all have that modifier and that same kind of value, we can link the animation data. So let's do that same process again. Select those, select that, Control L, and then animation data. Okay, so now they're all rotating, but they're a little bit too in sync. They're dancing a little too much. In sync dancing. Wow. 90s throwback. Anyone get that? There's so many jokes I make in my tutorials that nobody ever leaves comments on. Come on, guys. Are you watching? Are you paying attention? Do you appreciate jokes and the puns? Just kidding. Okay, so if I want to like scatter these around, offset them a little more. By the way, thank you. If you've been watching this long, I already know this tutorial is getting long. I haven't actually alt-tabbed to check how long, but so if I wanted to change this, it's gonna change like all of them, and I want to change them individually. Like I want the waving to be a little more fluid. So the way I can do that is by now unlinking the objects. So let's see, objects now I think there's so relations, I think there's a hotkey for this, but it used to be something and it changed in 2.8 and I haven't found it. So I'm going to make single user for the object animation. So at first I linked it so that they would all get the data, and now I'm going to unlink them so that I can move them individually. Okay, so now if I move this, yes, the other ones are moving. And I haven't actually tried this. Let's try it real quick maybe. Let's try using a... No, because then I have to apply it to all of them. Uh-oh. Let's... You could try using a noise, but I'm going to show you how I did it. I just move things around. This is kind of a ridiculous, probably slow process, but just kind of move things around, duplicate them. This is the handcraftedness of a Dirk animation. If you're ever interested in hiring me for a freelance project, this is the kind of care and attention that the curves get in any of my projects. So I'm just moving things around here. I just want to create a little bit more randomness. Like I don't know how wind actually blows. Come on. Give me a break. It's just, this is how we're just going to move all these around. So there should be 12 curves here. Let's maybe make this one goes wild. Add some more curves. Move some curves around. Now these are still going to all look kind of similar because they have like kind of the same amount of curves and they bend back, but just bear with me. Make it look cool. That's not even, it's like out of the animation. All right, finally moved them all. So now let's take a look at this. Oh yeah. Okay, so one of these guys is moving a little too slow. This one right here. Oh yeah, he needs some more movement. That's looking good. That's looking a little better. Let's get you moving. Red Bull and vodka for you, Mr. Grass. All right, this is way too much. You get how the effect works. You probably want to spend some more time messing with that. But yeah, they're all rotating around, looking pretty slick. Looks a little funky, obviously, with these short ones, a little less realistic than with the long, but that is how I have made grass look like it blows. Now, it looks really bad. Let's bring back up the particles to 3000 here. So, and this is all together. Like, you're looking at the car. You're not looking at the grass, okay? Do you see what I'm saying? It's a little wavy. All right. I'm going to mess with it more after the fact. The patrons will have the messed with file, but so yeah, I'm going to mess with some more with the intro, make it look a little bit better, spice things up, but that's pretty much it. What did we do? We added our lighting. We changed the car color. We did the wavy grass. We added the headlights. We made the grass grow. Oh, wait, there it is. We have to turn it back on here. Now, if you want to render this in cycles, which I think looks the best, I'll show you really quickly also how to do... How long is this tutorial, actually? Oh, Jesus, it's 50 minutes. That's okay. I want to show you how to use the new AI denoiser very briefly. Nothing in this tutorial has been brief. Let's go into our compositor. And let's turn on... So there's the AI denoiser is built in. So let's use nodes for one. And then when we render this, we want to use... You guys have probably already seen other tutorials on this, but if you turn on this denoising data option, it will add more options here. Add more data when you render. It'll output all that other stuff. So we can do a filter denoise, pop that in there, and then just link all these up. And then when you render, it'll use the AI denoiser, which looks really well. You don't have to use quite as many samples. Like honestly, 128 would probably be fine with the denoiser on. But other than that, if you're watching this far, you probably set your resolution up, frame rate. You want to render these as individual frames, especially if you're rendering in cycles, because it's going to take a long time. You don't want to try to render it straight to a video. It's better to have control over all those frames. But yeah, I think we'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. I think I might also add a big Dirk logo to the side of that. Again, if you're watching this far, you can probably figure out how to do that. If not, then my goodness, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to keep this tutorial under an hour. We're already at 50 minutes, something like that, minus the intro that I'll add later. Yeah. There's no point in me hurrying this outro up. It's been a long time we've spent together. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll look forward to seeing your grass animations. Tag me on Instagram. Do things besides cars. Do chairs. I like chairs, furniture, all sorts of furniture. Yeah. Thanks. See you next time. Peace.